Our nervous system is like a river, and when the river bursts its bank, that's what trauma is. Hi, my name's Rodger Duckworth, and for the last 30 years, I've been helping people on the verge of losing hope due to their complex chronic illness and condition, and not only helping them to manage, but to overcome those conditions. So if we view our nervous system and our being actually as having a capacity to tolerate certain things, then rather like a river, if the rain is too much, too fast, for too long, or actually in the case of neglect, not enough, that creates a drought and problems as a result of that. But too much, too fast for too long, and the river's capacity that it can deal with certain amounts of variation of water in the river just goes, I can't cope. And then it breaches the riverbank and creates a flood. We have a tolerance, we have a window of tolerance in our body and our nervous system's ability to cope with variation. We can deal with stress. Stress isn't a problem. Stress is a part of life. Stress actually is, shall we say, a heightened state of activity in our nervous system. And more, I'm on holiday, everything's fine, don't need to worry, is a different state in our nervous system, a more relaxed state. So stress and relaxation are completely normal for us to fluctuate between the two. But when it goes too much for that, too much, too fast, too long, our system can't tolerate it. And so we flood the system. This is where we get into fight or flight responses. It gives us an indication as to whether we feel safe or not. What is relaxation is I feel really, really safe. I've got an interview right now and it's really important that I get this job. Well, there's a pressure. Now, we can feel that. We might feel a dry mouth. We might feel butterflies in our stomach. These are our body's ways of preparing us and saying, don't digest dinner right now. We have to be prepared to stay alert, hyper-focused. Maybe it feels slightly threatening, and so actually there's a primitive part of us that thinks I might need to just run away, or I might need to deal with that situation or defend myself if I feel threatened by the interview panel. And our skill as people is to learn to tolerate that volume of stress, that volume of increased water in the river. But if there is overwhelm of that, then our body has to do something with that stress, which might mean we get up and say, I'm sorry, I can't do this, and we leave the interview. Or if it's not an interview and it's a sort of a threat in the street, we might need to just go, I'm going to run and get away. Well, then that saves us. So safety in our nervous system is, and how safe we feel is really important to understand in terms of trauma, capacity in our being and our nervous system. But very often if the fight or flight is not effective, and this is probably more common for people with complex chronic illness, is it's all right if we can actually get away, because then we get away from the threat and it comes down. If we're unable to get away from that threat, then we will use the opposite, which is to freeze or flop or fawn, the 5 Fs. Yeah, people talk about fight, flight, freeze, but really there's also flop and fawn. Now, functional freeze is a term that in trauma therapy we might refer to a lot, which is you're not completely frozen like a rabbit in the headlights, but a part of you is frozen. I worked with somebody recently and there was a pattern creating their headaches and neck pain and migraines, which came from a time in their lives where they didn't feel safe, and so, it wasn't safe for them to defend themselves, because they were too young and too small. And so what happened was the natural instinct to protect or to stop was thwarted. And so then it's like the body wants to start the muscular movement of doing it, but then goes, no, that's not safe, because if you defend yourself, it may get worse. And so we thwart that. And then we get this pattern that every time our body feels the sense that, uh-oh, here it goes, last time, many, many years ago, when we felt this is what we had to do. And so it copy-paste, this is how we know we deal with that. And so it's trying to keep you safe, and that's great. But there's a cost of doing business that way. And it comes at a cost of pain or dysfunction and dis-ease. What do we do about that? Well, this is where the skill of a good trauma therapist comes in. The beauty of experienced practitioners is that they can see the impact into the other physiological aspects of the body. These are the organs and how they're affected. I was taught physiology at a deep, deep, deep level, but I'd like to think that what I'm bringing to my patients is the breadth of both that mind and body expertise and understanding. And I think that when we can do that, then it allows us to treat complex illness in a much, much richer way. So I think, our body's like a river, it has a capacity. But if we go outside of our window of tolerance, our body's ability, we have to cope. If we don't feel safe, we have to cope. And it's the coping strategy, what's sometimes said is that which was adaptive becomes maladaptive. And much of our work is working with that maladaptive behavior and creating it, taking it back to being a much more regulated state.